popping with the population? It's another episode of Durag with the Cape Road. It's your boy, well, your man, whatever you want to call me. It's Dre. It's Dr. King Day, so you already know a lot of the news outlets is going to keep running that I Have a Dream speech until they blue in the face, and they're going to keep misrepresenting Dr. King's movement and what he believed in, his ideology, and they're only going to talk about one aspect of his life, saying, yo, he just wanted black and white people to hold hands and kumbaya, and completely ignore and rewrite the history of the man. Because first of all, he didn't even really want to do the I Have a Dream speech. Like the March on Washington, he wanted to be there, but John Lewis was supposed to be the main speaker. But that's history that you can look into yourself. That's not to say that he didn't want to be there. But his ascension from that turned into him leaning more radical in his later years in life, especially after Malcolm X died, was assassinated. But people tend to or don't know about his speech at Riverside Church in Harlem. I'm from Harlem, so I know about the speech. I mean, I wasn't born, clearly, but Riverside Church is still there. Like, he spoke about Vietnam. It was beyond Vietnam, where he was basically speaking about a lot of what's going on today.
And sending them 8,000 miles away to guarantee liberties in Southeast Asia, which they had not found in Southwest Georgia and East Harlem. So we have been repeatedly faced with the cruel irony of watching Negro and white boys on TV screens as they kill and die together for a nation that has been unable to seat them together in the same schoolroom. So we watch them in brutal solidarity, burning the huts of a poor village. But we realize that they would hardly live on the same block in Chicago or Atlanta.
Because the thing that people got to realize is that we aren't that different than we were prior. The only thing that's better now than then is we got like phones and computers and whatnot, but humans haven't advanced as much as we would like to believe. But he is way more than I Have a Dream speech. I mean, when you look at when he was assassinated, he was giving a speech for like the sanitation union. Like, that's one of the reasons he was down there, like, about getting the people together, because he realized, like, oh, once he became more radicalized, like, oh, it's a battle of not white and black, but of the people, the proletariat versus capitalism and versus warmongering. That's the real issue. But anytime you have people like, for instance, Ronald Reagan, who was the one that codified, like, he made Martin Luther King Day a federal holiday or whatever. When you look at him, he's a prime example of what Dr. King was against. But Ronald Reagan took his message and just co-opted it and made it more toothless, where it's just like, yo, we just want to hold hands. Like, don't get me wrong, obviously peace and love amongst people is something needed, but you don't get justice without fighting for it. You know what I'm saying? So the position that we in now is like, you see that it's still not that different than it was then. I mean, granted, you don't have people getting hosed out in the streets and getting attacked with dogs as far as black folk, but you still got people being extrajudicially killed by cops, and like, you still got the uneven numbers when it comes to policing, and so how many people are still living under police rule in regards to like parole and all types of, you got a lot going on, right? And as he was, doing his thing, he was constantly especially when Hoover was the head of the CIA, right? Or was that VI? I forget. I think it was the CIA. Because I think that was COINTELPRO. But when you have Hoover, who had just this weird obsession with black people and black liberation. Like, he just did not want black folk to do anything with themselves. So there was something that predated COINTELPRO that I cannot think of right up now off the top of my head, but he was the one that like headed COINTELPRO, like was a part of like just thwarting any and all dissent basically from the status quo, because the status quo is very dangerous. So be careful of who you talk to in regards to like people wanting change in the world. Some people just want the status quo, those people being Democrats, and some people just want complete hell on earth, some of those people being Republican. But all in all, the duopoly that we live in, you have people who either want it to be the way it used to be, or you want people who want the status quo. The status quo was not liberation. It never was, and it never will be. And those same people that want the status quo, like for instance, like a Joe Biden, like the corporate, regular establishment Democrats, those people are dangerous to you. Now, as far as voting goes, since we are in a duopoly, because no one cares about a third party, I feel like Ralph Nader has been running for president since before I was born, and maybe before my mama was born, and maybe before her mama was born. But nobody wants that. But since we're at a point now where you literally have two old white men arguing about stuff that you aren't even involved in, using your money to blow small children up all around the world, you realize like, oh yeah, we need to dismantle the current situation, because clearly it is not about the people. And while Dr. King was riding out doing what he had to do, like he had Coretta with him through all of that. And, you know, through his trials and tribulations, like with COINTELPRO, like they claim that there's proof or whatever of him cheating on his wife, and that they have like recordings, as far as voice recordings of him with other women. And it's like, but Coretta was his Coretta through it all. Like, she was major, like Johnathan. Pause. I don't know if you like that segue, but that man needs to stop invoking the name of Coretta Scott King, because that makes absolutely no sense, because neither of the women that he has invoked her name upon are her.
What Coretta Scott King, you know who that is? That's Martin Luther King's wife. Michelle Obama, Barack Obama's wife.
Outside of, they are also females who identify as women, like they are. I mean, at least Making Good is black, but the other woman is a white lady who, what? Like, why are you calling these women Coretta Scott King? I think it's in Michelle Obama.
You're a coon. You're a nigga.
I think it has more to do with his breakdown of like who he's supposed to be. Like, when you make it to a certain position within whatever you're doing, you have to make sure you keep control of your character all the way through. So when you look at Dr. King, he went from wanting peace and love amongst black and white folk, you know, and ending segregation, calling for integration and all of these things. And as he started to change his thinking, he still kept control of his identity. After he passed away, he lost control of his identity. Clearly, he wasn't alive. So he had other people telling his story. When you have somebody like a Johnathan Majors, he's a great actor, done a couple films. He's playing other people, so you don't really know who he is. After things came out with him in domestic violence, and you hear people who went to film school with him say that he wasn't the best person and all these other things, and you start to realize like, oh, this is somebody you're portraying. Like, we don't really know who you are. When you listen to that phone call that he had with his ex-girl that he got into a domestic dispute with, where, you know, he's running from her because she's mad at him for having another girl on his phone and whatever have you, you realize like, oh, this is who you are. Like, this is who you seem to be, who you're presenting to the world. Because Kang and you ain't the same person, but you need to stop invoking the name of Coretta Scott Kang, fam, because I don't know, I think maybe if there's a heaven or whatever have you, if you are still conscious after you pass away, she needs to send some former civil rights activists to like haunt him, because that's what type of time are you on, fam? Like, and the way that they moving with him right now, as far as him doing that interview, him like crying or whatever in the interview, and still trying to stay relevant in the media, it leads one to believe like maybe they're trying to get him back like in the film world, like fast. Usually somebody of his stature as far as a black man within this current system would be pretty much done. But I think he keeps convoking Coretta Scott King because they're about to drop an MLK movie or something. Like he maybe, I mean, look, R.P. to Chadwick Boseman, he done played every black person in historical context, like since the beginning of time when he was acting. So maybe Johnathan Majors is the next one. Maybe we're going to see him play Dr. King. I don't know, fam. Because I don't get his logic on that. Like, I think when it comes to who you are and what you are two totally different things. And the who you are needs to be constantly interrogated. And, like, by you need to figure out, like, how to react and move within this world, because you can put yourself in weird spots. And this is not to excuse or sympathize, so to speak, with what went down with him and that young lady, but this is more to speak on like dealing with you, like figuring out who you really are, like and as you figure that out, like standing on that and being able to die with that. Like Dr. King was obviously assassinated, but he was able to die as the man that he was. Like Johnathan Majors is trying to figure himself out, it looks like. I think he needs to go find some form of help within that regard. I don't know the man personally, clearly, and I'm only speaking from what I've seen and don't care that much about whether or not he does any more movies. I mean, if his career's over, I don't want to see that. You know, if we live in a system that claims that we want people to have retribution, rehabilitation and be better and you know what I'm saying? Like, then there should be something that comes from this if he does the right steps to get himself the way he needs to be. But one of those first steps is stop calling every woman you deal with Coretta Scott King, because what are you even talking about, man? That's just super wild. And I think when you look at the history of Dr. King, like if you go past the March on Washington and you look more into his politics and what he was speaking about with like basically one of the first people, without saying it, wanting a universal basic income, when he's like becoming for our checks, like that type of talk, he was getting more radicalized and understanding like, yo, the only way to stop something is to stop something. Change does not play by the rules. So when you hear a lot of these conservatives or a lot of people who are completely for the status quo, because I'd rather not even call you hateful. I'd rather just say you're for the status quo, because then that would already imply that you might be. But when you see a lot of these people that are for the status quo, they want you to play within the parameters of what's currently going on. For instance, you have people protesting or whatnot, and you tell them, this protest is inconveniencing this, you're shutting this down. That's the point of protest. No one protests when they're happy. You don't protest because it's fun. You do it because it's an issue that needs to be dealt with right now. Like, it's like a baby crying when it poops itself. He's not crying to just get your attention to be like, oh yeah, I'll just let you not poop. It's like, no, do something about this right now. But as far as people, it's like, no, we're doing this so you can, it's because something needs to be done. We need to do something. So when you see these people try to defang and completely weaken movements by telling you to play within the rule set, that makes no sense, because the rule set is why you're mad in the first place. No? Like, the way in which we are currently operating is why people feel the way they do. Like, you have the court case going on with the ICJ, with South Africa going at Israel for doing what they're doing, which in turn is tying in America. And America's like, nah, we ain't do nothing. But it's like, yeah, you did. and you have the American media not really putting up a lot about that because it's warmongering. Like, it's a thing that Dr. King talked about in Beyond Vietnam in his speech. You just have to not allow yourself to be caught up in the games of it all, and if you really want change, you have to change something. So to stop something is to stop something. To change something is to change something. As redundant as that sounds, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I hope so. But the way in which this world is working, you have people who want you to do better or want things to be different, but only under their terms. So you have like a Johnathan Majors who has this spat in this dispute with his ex-girlfriend, and it turns into something that ends him up in court, and you have people condemning him for what he did, but then you don't want him to change, or you do. I don't know what. And then he don't know what to do with himself, because clearly he's no more human. He's no more human than you are human. Like, we all human. Like, he just happened to be on a bigger stage, with more eyes on him. So he's easily facing more scrutiny. And he's wilding out so much that he calling everybody Coretta Scott King because they don't know where he at. I don't know, man. All I'm saying is, to truly find yourself and to truly go out of this plane of existence as the person that you believe you are, you have to constantly interrogate that character. You have to constantly deal with that person to make that person, which is you, a better person for everybody, but definitely yourself. Like, Dr. King went from, okay, I'm understanding the situation that we currently in. Like, he was one of the people that was like initially supporting the state of Israel, because he wasn't knowledgeable all the way on like what was exactly going on as far as Zionism is involved. He was supporting it from a standpoint of like how anybody would. Like, oh, these are Israeli people that were, condemned, killed, whatever have you, because of the Holocaust by 2 million people, 2 million to 6 million, depending on who you ask, depending on what historian gives you the numbers as far as Jewish people that passed away. It was a lot of people, period. People forget that African people were also killed by Nazis, and Jewish people were also like killing like European people who they thought might have been homosexual or stuff like that. There's a lot of people that died. And so numbers as far as Jewish people alone is like 2 million to 6 million is debated in that regard, which is weird to debate genocide. I don't understand that. But whatever, I guess. But he was coming from a place that a lot of black folk at the time were like, oh yeah, y'all are, going through it, and y'all just got past it. Like, y'all need a place to be. So yeah, word, Palestine, like Israel, let's make a state. But not really knowing what all that was going on. Then you have like people within SNCC, like this wonderful editor. I think she was also a journalist, Ethel Minor, black woman, because black women, if you look up the civil rights movement, if you look up any black power movement, all the movements, I said pejoratively, predominantly black women. We just, because we live in a patriarchy, you only hear about the men. But Ethel Minor, she was one of the people who put out an article that was using information that she got from Palestinians and got from like pictures from them in regards to what was going on. It was an Israel-Palestine war. They've been fighting for like about 50, 60, well, since the 60s or the 40s, since the 40s. They've been fighting for a long time. 1940s. But I forgot when this war was, but this war, she posted it. Israel had a problem with it. But the Israeli people had a problem with the Zionists who were trying to push the narrative of, like I said, that one state, but that one state not being one state where Israeli people and Palestinian people live in harmony and community, but where Israeli people moved the Palestinian people to another Arab country, as what they're doing now, as what your boy Benjamin Netanyahu is saying, like, nah, we're not doing that, even though there were so many people from his cabinet, even him, who has stated that that's what they're trying to do. That's a part of the genocide case. So always remember, you have to own your identity. Don't let nobody tell you who you are, and make sure that Johnathan Majors stops saying Coretta Scott King's name, and also make sure your Durag cape is rolled. All right.